We'll give it another minute. Welcome everybody to September's ADHD Support Group meeting. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Jeeva. I'm sure you all know Dr. Jeeva, who's a specialist ADHD child and adult psychiatrist, who has ADHD himself. Then we've got Sumaya. She's an ADHD coach, and she has had various people in her life who've been ADHD, and she's had to have relationships with them, and yeah, she can chat later on too. Then Anita and Dave will be talking to us tonight. Anita's an ADHD coach and ADHD herself, and Dave is a non-ADHD partner in the relationship. So we're very excited to welcome Dave, who's going to tell us his experience living with an ADHD person. And my name's Tracy Pinder. I'm ADHD too, and I'm an ADHD coach. So welcome everybody, and let's kick off with Anita and Dave. Thank you for attending and for sharing with us.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Trace. Hi, everyone. So just to introduce ourselves again, we are Anita and Dave, and we have been married for 10 years. We've been together for 13 years. So how we'll structure this is we're just going to give you our perspective. So Dave will give you his perspective of what it's like to be in a relationship with someone who's ADHD, and I will give you my perspective of what it's like to be with a non-ADHD person and some of the struggles and challenges that we face, and then some tips of how to overcome, how we work through these challenges. So you can go first.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, just I suppose a bit of background. I'm an accountant, so very boring, and probably if you look at ADHD, I'll be on the other end of the spectrum. I'm sort of very organized and quite regimental in the way I lead my life. So I think it's quite an interesting contrast, sort of Anita with ADHD and me not. So yeah, I think the last 10 years, 13 years has had its challenges. So yeah, we'll get there later in the tips as well, but I think the one other thing that's worth saying at this stage is that the more I find out about ADHD, the easier everything becomes. And it's much easier to understand where Anita's coming from. And yeah, I mean, I'm like I say, coming from a very opposite extreme. So, you know, just the understanding of that and the differences is quite important. But yeah, what we thought we'd do just to sort of kick it off is just from my side, sort of some of the things that have been the most difficult for me in being in a relationship with Anita having ADHD. And yeah, I mean, I think the one is probably the first one, and the major one is completion of tasks. So, you know, it'll just be a case of Anita will go through stages where she's extremely sort of efficient at doing things when she says she's going to do them. And at other times, you know, it won't happen, or there'll be a big delay. So I think that can be frustrating, you know, for me. And again, Anita's also going to touch on this, but you know, I think there can be a tendency for the non-ADHD partner to sort of just jump in and say, well, I'll just do it. It's quicker and easier to do it. And I think that's something else we've had to learn, is that that's not actually the best way. It's not, you know, a sustainable solution to anything. But yeah, that's been the one thing. Another issue, I suppose, linked to that to some degrees is the time blindness, which is something I've only really found out about, you know, probably in the last year. I think it needs to spoken to me a lot about that since then. And yeah, I think it's quite difficult for someone like me, because I'm pretty much governed by time. You know, whatever I'm doing, I have routines and know exactly what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do. Always aware of, you know, sort of commitments we have, and you know, I think if anything, you know, makes sort of me on edge quite all the time. Anita can lose track of it completely. And so, yeah, I think it's probably good in a way that we're so different in that respect, so that she can sort of help me loosen up. But at the same time, I can, you know, help with a timeline. But again, understanding that we're coming from totally different places on that, yeah, it's important to know. I I think another point that we've discussed quite a bit is just the tendency of ADHD people possibly to dial out or to focus on something that isn't really what is the thing in front of them. So Anita will tell you how long and boring my stories are, which is probably right. But yeah, it's there'll be days where I'll just start on one of my stories, and it's something that I'm clearly passionate about, and I'll start going, and like 30 seconds in, I can just see there's no buy-in. She's looking at the phone, she's looking out the window, she's doing whatever, but the story is just not registering at all. And yeah, I think the thing for me then is I think we are going to talk about rejection sensitive dysphoria at some point, but I think I definitely suffer from that as well. So I'm also a very sort of sensitive person, probably too much so. So I'll just take that as an insult. Immediately I'm offended that this wonderful thing I'm trying to tell her is just not grabbing her attention one bit. So that's again something that we've had to learn. I've learned, I suppose, to pick my time to tell her these fantastic things a little bit better. And yeah, sorry, I made some notes just looking around. And then just I think the other thing is possibly the brakes, because I know there's always talk about bicycle brakes, and I think my experience of that is sometimes we'll have conversations where I've got the brakes on most of the time, sort of censoring what I want to tell this person or that person, and Anita sometimes doesn't have that, so there'll be a tendency to say things that oh goodness, that person should not know.
Basically,
that.
I embarrass him a lot.
Yeah, so we've had some of those, and
no filter.
Yeah, so that's also something we discuss, and yeah.
I mean, it's like, why did you say that? That's so inappropriate.
Yeah, very funny, but probably like, inappropriate.
I don't remember saying that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think from our side, those are probably the biggest challenges. Sort of, and again, all becoming easier and more about the condition and why it's natural.
Lovely, well done. That wasn't boring at all.
Good.
Thank you, Dave. That was great. That's great. Thank you. Anita, from your side.
So, from my side, and I think a lot of ADHD people feel like this generally. So it's not really in relationships. It could be with your family, at work. You sort of feel very misunderstood because our brains work very differently. We have totally different thinking processes. We think outside the box. We're very creative. We don't belong in a box. So often when you spend a lot of time with someone who's not ADHD, you feel a bit, I don't want to say lonely, but I think the best word is misunderstood. So that person will sort of look at you and they're like, why are you doing it that way? And it's like, well, that's the way I want to do it. And it's the way I like doing it. So you often get this feeling of you not being understood. You have a different brain, you've got a different thought process, you see things differently and you approach things differently. So you've got to realize that. So you've got to know that your brain is different. The other thing that I find a challenge is I know that routine and structure and discipline is very good for ADHD, but it can become a bit monotonous and boring. So it's very good to have your structure. It's very good to have a partner who is structured and who has got routine. But for an ADHD person, sometimes we just like to be very spontaneous. We thrill seekers. We like to go do something crazy. So I find, yeah, you do get quite bored, with the structure and the routine. Although it's very good for you, it does get a little bit monotonous. So I'm sure other people have this where you just struggle with a bit of boredom. Sometimes you just need to go and do something crazy. I don't know. We're ADHD, so we are a bit crazy. Another thing that comes up is this parent-child dynamic. So with ADHD, sometimes you drop the ball on things and you don't, you forget to pick up the milk. So your partner ends up doing a lot of these things, and you can fall into this. Your partner does kind of become the parent, which is quite dangerous, and it's quite tricky to navigate. So that's something to definitely watch out for. You've got to have your accountability and your, you said you were going to do this, you've got to do it. So don't fall into that thing of picking up after this person, that we've got to learn how to pick up after ourselves. It's very important. And the more you do pick up for the person, the more their self-esteem suffers, because then it's like, okay, well, I really can't do this because this other person's doing it for me. So the more you allow them to do it and hold them accountable, the more you're building their self-esteem. So those are things that I have realized. I'm going to go into the tips and advice. Okay, now we're going to give you some tips and advice. Do you want to start?
No, you go. You do the one.
Okay, so the number one tip that we've realized, and Dave spoke about this, learn about ADHD. Learn as much as you can. The minute we started learning about it, the minute we found Tracy, the minute we met Dr. Jeeva, the minute we started going to all his, following him around with his school talks, the more we learned about it, the better our relationship became. There are so many books, there are so many videos, there's so much information on it. The more you get to know about it, the easier your life will become for you and your partner, because you begin to understand that person and understand why they do these things, and why a lot of it are the executive functions that are faulty and not working. And it just explains so much when you learn and read up on it.
Yeah, I think from my side, 10 years ago, I knew about, well, I thought it was ADD. And I mean, honestly, I didn't know much about it, but it sounded like a bit of a gray area, possibly a cop-out, not a real thing. And the more I've sort of found out about it, understanding that it's brain chemicals and all sorts of things, I appreciate so much more what Anita's going through. I think that, the last 3-4 years, just having that extra knowledge, it's probably softened my approach in our relationship, and I think it's been helpful to understand sort of what it is and how many areas of Anita's life it can impact.
Another thing we found was play to each other's strengths. So Dave is a CA. I'm not a CA. I'm ADHD. I struggled with maths. A lot of us struggle with maths. It's part of the faulty executive functioning. So I'm not going to go and do the accounts and the books and the tax. Dave, that is his strength, that is his career, and that's okay. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. So that is his strength, and he will do things like that. For me, I'm social, outgoing, I'm an extrovert, so I will organize stuff at home, family coming over, events like that. So play to know each other's strengths and play to those strengths and focus on those strengths and allow each other to shine where you are stronger.
Yeah, I think it's about contributing equally but differently, accepting the contributions are going to be very different.
Yeah. Which other one do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think the other thing, and yeah, it's 10 years of marriage, you're going to have some rough times. I think the one thing we've always done very well is communicate very respectfully. So, understanding that we're both very different, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. It's just a case of sort of really, watching what you say and obviously getting it across, but at the same time, just being very respectful. I think it's easy to get frustrated, at times and just say things that could hurt the person. And yeah, to the extent you can, just don't do that.
Yeah, respect for us is the number one value in our relationship. So we will never speak to each other with disrespect. We get frustrated, but we don't call each other names. That's a big no-no for us. So respect, respect, respect.
Yeah, and I think also because we're both quite sensitive, it's just something that works for us. I suppose other people could get over stuff quicker. But, you know, for us, that's not good.
Yeah. And then for me, with the time blindness, I've learned to externalize time. I use reminders. I print out my calendar, my to-do list for the day. I've got post-its, I've got schedules. So you've just got to learn how to keep those things right in front of your face, because it's not gonna hold in your mind. You need to externalize time. You need to, even if you put post-its in your car of what you have to pick up at the store, you've got to put everything out. Everything must be external. It must be in front of your vision. So I've learned to get around.
Yeah, so I think it was probably about 2 or 3 years ago, Anita started putting reminders on her phone for literally everything. And I mean,
even petrol.
Yeah, I know, everything. It was a very irritating ringtone that came up, but it totally changed the way she managed her life, you know, which obviously made things a lot easier for me. But yeah, I think that there was a game changer completely. I mean, the to-do list on our bedroom wall is insane.
Yeah, there's lists.
It
lists
means
everywhere.
Anita gets to the end of the day and she's done everything. So it's very helpful.
Yeah. And be positive.
Yeah. Yeah, enjoy the differences, except that, if we're all exactly the same, we're very boring. So for us to, we're exact opposites. So we're learning all the time. But yeah, focus on the good.
Can I ask you, Anita and Dave, thank you so much. Can I just say, so 90% of people with ADHD have a thing called RSD, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria. So we perceive we've been rejected even if we haven't been, and this is a big problem in our relationships. So we can become people pleasers, or eventually, because it creates so much anxiety, we stop trying to please. How has RSD, do you have RSD, Anita, and how has that affected you? And your relationship with Dave?
I have RSD, and Dave, he's not ADHD, but he has RSD as well.
Big time. So
it has affected us because it affects your communication. You say one thing, the other person takes it the wrong way. Eventually, then you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to say anything. So you kind of shut down quite a bit. For us, we're very aware of each other's sensitivity. So we are very careful with our words. We're very careful with what we say to each other. I think because we both feel the same way in that aspect. I know if I say this, it's going to hurt Dave, and he's going to dwell on it quite a bit. And the same with me. He knows the trigger words. So we're very good in that way. But yeah, it affects. And a lot of the time, you know, I'll say, well, this person's taking 2 days to reply to me. What have I done wrong? And, you know, Dave will put it in perspective, and he's like, well, maybe they're busy and maybe something's wrong. And so it's actually nice to have that person you bounce those ideas off of each other. But it's tricky. RSD is, I think, just also being aware of it. So ask yourself, is it personal, or is it my RSD? Is it my RSD acting up? And the more you ask yourself and you're aware of it, the easier things become. You know, you can actually, when someone replies to you and you look at the tone of the message, like, is it my RSD? And most of the time it is.
I think it's probably easier in our situation because I'd say I've got it at least as bad as Anita. I mean, the word that sums me up is catastrophizing. So if someone looks at me funny, then I'm like, wow, this person hates me. You know, they're going to slash my tires and a million other things, and the whole thing escalates. So I think I'm as sensitive as Anita, possibly more so. So we end up, at least we're very understanding of each other in that respect.
Yeah.
So a great tool for that is to diffuse distressing emotions, to say to yourself, what is fact and what is opinion? So that immediately can diffuse those distressing emotions and say, okay, so this is fact. Fact is evidence-based, and then opinion is just our opinion of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And is this my RSD acting up? That helps me a lot.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Jeeva now. I don't know if you want to elaborate more on RSD and relationships, Dr. J. You muted. There we go.
Oh, yeah. I said we'll leave RSD for next time. I got a screen share. I got a screen share this, so.
Okay, I'll let you know. I'm going to let you give you permission. Sorry. Okay. You should be able to screen share now, Dr. J.
Yeah. Screen share with this one. All right. Can you see that?
Thank you. We can.
I suppose we can make it. So today's topic is that, of course, we know ADHD and relationships, and just make this small. The important thing is that our three main cardinal symptoms are impulsivity, which can get us into trouble, overactivity, and lastly, inattention. But as you get older in the years, the inattention gets worse, the impulsivity gets half worse, but the activity gets the least. So those are the things that will get us in trouble at university or in a relationship or in marriage. So unfortunately, ADHD parents are 3 times higher risk than the normal population for divorce. And about 38% of the ADHD, they border around divorce. 22% said it never crossed their mind. And 31%, this is wrong, 31% they have thought about it sometime. So the divorce rate is about 38%, 40%, and it's nearly twice as high as a non-ADHD couple. So why would that be so? Because if you look at the kids, in the little kids, you get the combined type, you get the inattentive type, and you get the hyperactive impulsive type. So the most common is the combined type, and they have activity and impulsivity. So they're very bossy, they're very controlling, they are very domineering. So the other kids don't want to play with them because they say, Johnny always decides what we should play and what we should do. So they don't want a very powerful, active guy. And on the other side, the inattentive patient, more in girls and guys, is very quiet and boring and innocuous. So the parent, nah, we don't want to go to his house. It's very boring. There's nothing to do there. So basically, you into a combined type or an inattentive type. You join them up, you cut them in half, and that's what you need. So this goes on to adulthood. That is why the ADHD kids, they don't have friends. Even ADHD adults, they don't have that many friends because we, without thinking, we tell the people SHIT, and when they criticize us, we fight back, as you were talking just now about RSD. So these are the seeds of going towards separation and divorce. Hallowell says the hallmark of ADHD, in whichever way, now this is at home, in relationship, is procrastination. And great that we got all our coaches here today. And the pills does not teach you skills. The pills cannot reverse this. So we strongly need our coaches to help us with skills as far as procrastination is concerned.
Dr. J,
Now,
sorry, can you just,
yes.
we can't see that slide. We can only just see the first slide. I think you need to just go view slides.
Okay.
So we only seen the ADHD and relationship slide 1. We need to see slide 2 that you were talking about. So then go, there we go. Thank you. Thanks so much.
This one, can you see this one?
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you.
When you can't see, just tell me. Okay, this is what we just talked. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, this is what we talked about, that the impulsivity can get you into trouble, act before thinking. So stealing, fighting, and all the troubles that comes in relationships, and overactivity can. But the biggest problem as you get older is the inattention, and that's what's going to get us in trouble. So there's certain things that in the videos, I'm going to show you 3 videos, and some of these qualities are in the videos. One is impulsivity, is in the movie Mrs. Doubtfire. So you remember the movie, it's Robin Williams, who in real life was ADHD and bipolar. Anyway, and also he's always exciting the kids and doing funny things for them. So they have a need for stimulation. Then his wife thinks she's very obsessive compulsive because ADHD, active or combined type of patients or parents or people marry an obsessive compulsive type of person who sort of manages them and controls them. But instead of becoming their partner, they become their parents, and this creates a major issue. And forgetfulness is a big, big problem of inattention. In adult ADHD, you get more distraction than activity. And of course, interrupting. And then we got another video on Dr. Hallowell. So this is how distraction, you see, they're married, she's looking away, and he's busy with his computer, and she feels left out, she feels ignored, and she feels, distracted. And this is the seed for trouble. So a few things about in ADHD, the impulsivity comes out in relationships or in dating or in marriages. So ADHD is the only one kind of people, they fall in love instantly. And they were that same weekend, they want to get engaged, and the next weekend they want to get married. So, and an ADHD patient can tell me, doctor, I saw that girl and I told her I want to marry you. I mean, it didn't even, there's no relationship, nothing. So they start fast, they go through it fast, and they get eaten and spit up fast also. So they swept up by emotion. A common reaction among adults with ADD is to feel sure they have the soulmate. But just as exciting as they find this girl or this partner, that's how it gets boring, and then they let them go. So many adults with ADD actually seek conflict with their partner in order to stimulate their brains. So if ADHD people are too peaceful for the longest time, something is going wrong. Something is going to happen. Or if there's nothing happen, they create something. They create a fight. So then when they create a fight, all the dopamine, noradrenaline, all the neurotransmitters starts going and moving. So the fight makes them feel lacquer, and the lacquer is the dopamine. But calmly getting along without intense interaction may feel deadly to an adult who craves the stimulation of intense interaction. So we have to be aware of that. Another thing is ADHD constantly live in crisis mode. Always something goes wrong. Not terrible, but something goes wrong. And that's also a stimulation-seeking behavior. It's like living on the edge. And the more active or impulsive they are, the more they get into difficulty. And here he says they are always juggling too many balls in the air, inevitably dropping some and breakneck speed and anxiety creating, but never, never dull. Okay, this is what all the spouses complain about. My husband doesn't remember, we have our anniversary, and thousands of other things. He doesn't, our husband complained, my wife didn't pay the electricity bill and all that. So you have to dedicate jobs to you. The non-ADHD spouse should pay all the bills and do all the strict stuff, and the ADHD can do all the exciting or decorative stuff. Okay. Okay. Now here we're going to show you, there are 3 clips, and there's only part of a clip I want to show you, but I couldn't stop there. We need a judge to help us.
Shark
see
is,
that one. How come?
yeah, Shark is on
Why
Cordia.
can't we see that? Why can't we see that one? Chuck?
Shark was here.
All right, so let's do
Shark is here.
Let's do the long cut. Where are you again? Screen share. Now, okay. Now this is Mrs. Doubtfire, as you might know, and Robbie Williams is dressed as Mrs. Doubtfire, and that's his wife, who's very obsessive compulsive. And in transactional analysis, they talk about parent, adult, and child, how you should relate to each other as a parent in serious situations like funerals, and as a child, maybe in the beach playing, and normally as an adult. But here the things go wrong.
I can't hear the sound, Dr. J.
Sound is okay?
There's no sound.
No sound.
There's no sound. Oh, that's no good. What do you do with the sound? How come there's no sound?
I don't know.
Jacques, My friend is there, Jack. The sound is on maximum here. Okay, let's go backward again. I know why.
Oh, okay.
Well, oh, it's so sweet. I can't imagine what it was like being married to Daniel. Oh, tell me, dear, what was so
Sound
horrible
is
about
working.
this man you
Yes,
lived with before?
thank you.
Well, at first, nothing. He was so romantic, so passionate. Really? He sounds like an absolute stud, dear. Look, you don't mind me being a tad rude, but how was he? You know, on a scale of 1 to 10. Oh, well, that part was always okay. Just okay. Oh, he's probably a Casanova compared to poor old Winston. What was the matter with Winston? Oh, dear. Winston's idea of foreplay was, Effie, brace yourself. Oh. It was Daniel's spontaneity and his energy I fell in love with. Really? Everyone else I knew was so organized, so scheduled. Like me, I guess. Daniel was so wonderfully different and funny. He could always make me laugh. I always say the key to a solid marriage is laughter. But after a few years, everything just stopped being funny. Why? I was working all the time and he was always between jobs. I hardly ever got to see the kids, and on the nights I would try to get home early to be with him. Something would go wrong. The house would be wrecked and I'd have to clean it up. He never knew, but so many nights I just cried myself to sleep. Really? The truth is, I didn't like who I was when I was with him. I would turn into this horrible person. I didn't want my kids growing up with a mother like that. When I'm not with Daniel, I'm better. And I'm sure he's better when he's not with me. You never... I mean, did you ever say anything to him, dear? Daniel never liked to talk about anything serious. I used to think Daniel could do anything except be serious. But then I was serious enough for everybody.
So when she met him, or when they get married, it's all exciting. He looks after the kids, and she's very happy. She's got a husband that can look after everybody. But then in the movie, if you remember the movie, he's constantly in trouble. Constantly something goes wrong. So much so that she had to separate, divorce him, and he had to come back as Mrs. Doubtfire. But now here she says, I'm very obsessive. I'm more serious than anybody else. So instead of becoming his partner at his level, she becomes his mother. And of course, that's a problem. You can't have sexual relationship like that. So that is another issue. So we have to be careful that when we choose partners, we choose people that we like, but we also subconsciously choose people who complete the things that we can't do, or we don't like. So we have to be but careful about that. Otherwise, we tend to get into difficulty later on when there isn't a healthy relationship coming on. Okay, in this next clip, Dr. Hallowell talks about what type of a partner to choose.
It. And they don't understand it. For the life of them, they keep trying and trying and trying, but they get these inconsistent results. So unexplained underachievement, not only in relationships, marry the right person and find the right job. And adults with ADD often make the same means. They marry.
You can't hear?
And we can't see the
Video.
the video.
Yeah, we can't see the video, Dr. J.
Oh, we're supposed to screen share. Forgive me for the screen.
No,
Screen.
your screen share is on.
No, but from my side, I must share.
Okay.
See me is that they're underachieving. Flashes of
Can you see
brilliance, but
Yeah,
then
thank you, Dr. J.
completely blowing it. And they don't understand it. For the life of them, they keep trying and trying and trying, but they get these inconsistent results. So unexplained underachievement, not only in work, but in relationships. Marry the right person and find the right job. And adults with ADD often make the same mistake in both domains. They marry and work for a caricature of a bad grade school teacher. They marry and work for someone who is controlling, demeaning, picking, and someone who doesn't really like them all that much because they got the idea around about fifth grade that that's what they needed, that they were a hopeless case. So they had to be ridden herd on. They had to be controlled. They had to be demeaned and put down and so on and so forth. So don't do that. Marry someone who loves you. Marry someone who loves your upside and is willing to help you with your downside.
So it means they encourage the positive parts, and they can put up with your shit, your nonsense. And if you got somebody who's not like a school teacher who criticizes you all the time with a microscope, then you're in big trouble. But if they take it as a joke and funny, and that is John and that is Denise and this is how it is, then we've got places to go. Otherwise, there's constant problem in that area, where we tend to choose people who eventually control us and put us down. And we've ADHD kids have already been put down in their life. As I said a few times ago, they've been brought up in a CDE environment. How do you make this thing small? So constant criticism, that's where the RSD comes into. The constant CDEs, they're criticized, your marks are bad, and then you got 40% on Tuesday. There's a test, I want 80%, and it's not possible to get 80%. So so that's expectation, and then so criticizing, demanding, and expecting. Demanding 80% and Tuesday night give us a mark. And from that, we become very sensitive. And that is why when people do not involve us in the activities, we perceive that they don't like us or they don't love us. And we get super sensitive to these things. In this one, in the next clip, we're going to show how in marriages, adults, as I said, the main symptom in adults is distraction. So how does it affect your marriage?
Symptoms can be deceptive, and if you have the condition, it can take over your life.
I don't know about you guys, but my video is not changing.
Oh, thank you very much. Again, yeah, it's the screen sharing. Let me just get this.
Maybe stop screen share and then try again.
I'll be an expert eventually.
You will. You already got there.
I'm Jennifer. I have been diagnosed with ADHD in 2008.
My name's Steve Lindhorst. I'm 50 years old, and I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2009. In a normal, for me, I may find it easier to say how many times I'm not distracted. It's a constant battle.
I tend to become distracted in my thoughts during a conversation, and sometimes I can appear disinterested. It's not just with my children, it's romantic relationships. It was in my marriage. It's friendships.
I have my second marriage, and it's still very difficult because my wife has to cope with the results of ADHD.
ADHD has affected my relationship with my children in many ways, mainly because I'm always late. It looks as though I don't care about their event.
And I want to be dependable. I feel like over the years I've let people down whenever they relied on me for something and I forgot, and it seems careless, but it wasn't.
Getting a proper diagnosis and an evaluation is the best thing someone can do for themselves. It changed my life forever.
When I was diagnosed with ADHD, I felt like there was an answer to those questions. Why am I this way? Why am I this way, but everybody else seems to be that way? I think the hardest part about having ADHD is I feel I've missed out on certain things.
And Steve Lindhorst from Paso Robles, California, and Jennifer Gore from Chappaqua, New York are here. And also joining us is former Harvard Medical School professor and author of Delivered from Distraction, Dr. Edward Hallowell. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. That was so moving, Steve. Obviously, you got very emotional at the end of that piece. What do you feel like you have missed out on?
A lot of different things, but I think it's sort of a result of maybe not fulfilling some of the business projects that I've started. Didn't really get them to their top level. And so I feel like then as a result, maybe some of the nicer family vacations or some of the just some of the pleasantries in life.
So you feel like it's affected you professionally and it's precluded you from providing for your families and
Yes.
family in some ways.
Exactly.
What about you, Jennifer? What's been the most difficult part of living with this condition for you?
Oh, the most difficult part has been the distractibility. For sure, distractibility has affected every aspect of my life. School, unfinished tasks, projects, and relationships. Certainly the relationships with my children have been affected the most.
Because you can't focus on them, or?
Well, that's a good question, because they talk to me and they think I'm not listening. They think I'm not paying attention.
Well, are you?
I am, but sometimes my thoughts go off in directions, and it's not great that I don't have control over it. I get absorbed in a web of emotions that consume me, and yet I sort of get this blank stare. I call it, I just get this blank stare, and they look at me and say, "Are you listening? Are you paying attention?" And I say, "I am."
But sometimes is your mind elsewhere?
My mind is elsewhere, making connections from all sorts of emotions and all sorts of ideas. And I'm trying to stay on task, but it just happens. And now I know why. And I say, you know what? I need to take a break. Could you excuse me? Can you please repeat that for me? So I can.
But your mind basically wanders during the course of the conversation.
My mind wanders sometimes, not all the time. So they think sometimes I care and sometimes I don't. And that's hurtful to them. And
Right.
I understand their anger and frustration, but I'm accountable and I apologize.
Dr. Hallowell, is adult ADHD on the rise, or is it just being diagnosed more?
It's not on the rise, but it is being diagnosed more because we're, thanks to shows like this, we're raising public awareness. In fact, most doctors are not aware that it exists in adults. People think of it as a childhood condition. Probably 80% of adults who have it don't know it.
But it doesn't happen to you in adulthood. It's something that's simply diagnosed later in life. It's
Correct.
You don't have adult onset ADHD like you have adult onset diabetes, for
No,
example.
not at all. You were born with it. This is a genetic, most of the time, it is a genetically transmitted condition. You're born with the predisposition, and then your environment brings it out or not, depending upon what conditions you grow up in. And then, you might have a child and suddenly the organizational demand life overwhelm you, and so your ADD gets diagnosed. Or you might take a job at a busy investment firm and suddenly you can't keep up in the ways that you had been able to before. So depending upon your situation, you may suddenly discover these symptoms and get a diagnosis as an adult, as if you had adult onset, but it's really not. You've had it ever since you were born.
You mentioned ADD. What is the difference between ADD and ADHD?
Simply the presence or absence of hyperactivity. And most adults who have it don't have hyperactivity. They may be energetic, but they're not hyperactive. And it's confusing to people unnecessarily so. It's simply the presence or absence of hyperactivity.
And what is going on in your brain when you have ADHD?
Well, a lot is going on. As you said, it's essentially a state of disinhibition. You can't inhibit incoming stimuli, hence you're distractible, but also very curious. And you can't inhibit outgoing impulses, hence you're impulsive, but also highly creative, usually. In terms of neurotransmitters, it has to do with dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine. But a simple way to think of it is having ADD is like having a Ferrari for a brain, a Ferrari engine for a brain with bicycle brakes. You can't control it all the time.
So your circuitry is just going crazy?
And often in wonderful ways, but also sometimes in very distracting ways. People with ADD can super focus when they're into something. But the mind of the ADD person is like a toddler on a picnic. It goes wherever curiosity leads it without any regard for danger or authority. So sometimes going off and getting in trouble, and other times it's discovering penicillin, so, and that's it's the blessing and the curse of this condition. But if you can strengthen those brakes, control the power of that Ferrari, then you can do very well in life. But if you can't, that's the prison population or the unemployed or the multiply divorced, and that's what's so intriguing about it. It can be an enormous blessing and it can be an enormous curse.
So is there a genetic, there is a genetic component?
It runs in families. I have it, my children have it, and my dog has it. He's a Jack Russell, but that's I don't know about his lineage, but it is a trait that you're born with, and as I say, environment brings it out or not.
Thank you very much. I think we'll give the other two ladies so a chance. Anita, you want to get the other two people?
So, Samaya, would you like to add anything to this? Questions, if you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free to pop it into the message box and we can answer that. And I think that this is a good, we'd like to start it to become more interactive and answer things that are relevant for you now. What are you struggling with? And then maybe we can give you a tip or two or a different way of thinking, perspective that can help you.
So you can put your hand up and then we'll unmute you.
There was a question on RSD in the chat box, but I do remember us agreeing that we were going to do an entire session on that topic alone, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we're doing it next time.
Yeah, so we'll do that on the next session because it's quite a deep layered topic. So probably on the next one we can cover that. But just to expand also on Anita's and Dave's story, which was very nice to listen to because it felt familiar, even though I'm not in a marriage. It was quite interesting to listen to because the one thing that stood out was the aspect of communication and how deep that goes and how much effort it takes to get to a point where you can actually understand each other without judgment. And that understanding, and it helps with the RSD as well because then you're not taking the stuff that they're saying personally as well. So I think that was a thing. But there's one thing that wasn't mentioned which I wanted to touch on, which came up recently. Someone actually asked me a question about it, and that is the accommodations when it comes to things like ADHD medication. And I think the challenges and stigmas that surround ADHD medication and ADHD behavior with regards to even kids that aren't able to sit still or adults that blurt out things, for example, like Anita said. I think it's important for us as non-ADHDers to start to get comfortable with the unconventional ways of things that are being done. Just because we know how to do things a certain way, it doesn't mean that a person with ADHD is adulting wrong. And when it comes to medication, I've heard people saying that, they take their kids away aside and give them the medication quickly, or even adults that are taking their medication, they step aside and take their medication. And it's that stigma and embarrassment that sometimes ADHDers internalize a lot. And I think that's something I just wanted to bring up, in that as non-ADHD people, we need to start creating environments that are comfortable for people with ADHD so that can help them also to become comfortable with themselves. It also helps with their esteem issues and everything else that goes with them.
So in relationships, thanks, Samaya. So in relationships, we either contribute or we contaminate. And I think we need to look at it and say, so how can we contribute? And one of the big things that does come up with ADHD people, and it's often when I have marriage counseling or whatever, and the coaching, is that we do not listen. So we don't hear to answer, we hear to defend ourselves because of the RSD as well. So a really good thing is just to stop, prepare yourself to listen and hear what the person's saying. And that really does add a lot to a relationship, just to be validated and heard, our partner or whatever relationship we're in. So we need to just stop, prepare ourselves to listen, and listen to hear, not listen to defend ourselves. Anybody got a question? It was mentioned earlier that inattention and ADHD, inattention and forgetfulness increases age. How would you know when this happens? I've already forgotten what you said. I'm teasing. Dr. J?
Okay.
Okay, how would you know when this happens? Is it just your ADHD or something like dementia or similar?
Yeah, okay, I'll show that. Where's the screen sharing again? Screen share. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, so you see, these are the ages. We used to diagnose at 6, but now we can go as far down as 4 if you have the symptoms. And if you have the symptoms, then the first line of treatment is behavior therapy. But if there's no behavior therapy available or they're not responding, you can start medication. And then throughout the school years, the activity and the impulsivity, which is the main thing, the problem for grade 1 or when they're in school, when they're starting, that gets less and less with age by the time they hit matric or first year university. And the inattention, the impulsivity goes down, the activity goes down. But the inattention also goes down, but doesn't get better. It's above the red line. So in matric or first year, they crash and they have the problems like time management, organization, procrastination, financial management, anxiety, and depression. So the anxiety is the main presentation in young adults and adults, especially females. Depression is definitely there. And time management, organization, procrastination, people go to work in adult work, or they get married, or they go to university to study, and they think it's just normal to be late and it's normal to be forgetful. They don't realize it could be part of ADHD. And 40% of the first year university dropouts are adult ADHD. So this is it. And there's no direct link to ADHD and Alzheimer's or forgetful to that degree. But many of these qualities can be treated and can be taught, and they can teach them skills. And once again, that's where our coaches come in to help people to learn about our different techniques as far as reversing forgetfulness and things like that. But they don't have overt organic changes in a sense. No, they don't have that.
Thanks for sharing that, Dr. J. So you can get a recording of this if you just email me. Samaya has put the email address in the chat box, and we can send you a recording of this. If there are questions, you can also email it, because we're going to carry on with ADHD and relationships next week and RSD. So
just to give some sort of hope, there was a comment here directed to Anita and Dave, which is a very nice comment, basically someone appreciating your story. But they also asked, are you the only mixed or marriage whom you know of, basically looking for hope in the situation. I just want to say that there are many, many people that do get, successful. They are successful in getting this to work, but it requires effort. And I think with regards to that is sometimes we got to change our focus, and rather looking at the end result of things is start to take notice of each other's efforts, because effort is a good indicator of how much value you're bringing to a relationship.
Absolutely.
So my parents, sorry to butt in here, but my parents were a really good example of an ADHD and a non-ADHD. So my father was ADHD, very spacey, dreamy, to the point where his head was in the clouds. Literally, he used to fly airplanes every weekend. His obsession and his passion was flying airplanes. It's all he spoke about. It's all he wanted to do. And him and my mom met at college. They both studied pharmacy. My mom ran the business, both businesses. She ran the household, she being the non-ADHD person. But my dad brought so much to the marriage with his kindness and his creativity and his free spirit. So my mom was the Dave, and I am very similar to my dad. So yeah, that's one really good example, that's a successful example that we can think of.
Another slightly off target, startling fact is about 65% of the kids are diagnosed and treated. So we're not over-diagnosing and treating, but the most startling problem is that only 15% of adults are diagnosed and treated, 10% further are diagnosed and not treated, and 75% of adults are walking around, they don't know they have adult ADHD. And that is a major problem.
Absolutely.
Don't, because some of the symptoms that change from adolescent to adulthood, they think you've outgrown ADHD. And then the other thing is the activity and impulsivity that everybody always thought that that's ADHD, not thinking about inattention. So that does get less. So they think you've outgrown it, and then it permeates in different parts of your life, your work, your home, and socially, and that is the thing. And so we have to make an effort to educate the public more as far as learning about this condition and how can we treat or diagnose more people. And as soon as, especially if you, as therapists, if you've got a family where there are 3 kids and 2 adults and 4 out of the 5 are doing well, 1 is not doing well, then you better look, something is happening. Like where are all these people hiding away? How come 75% of people of adult ADHD are walking around and we haven't diagnosed them? So you find them in the jails, you find them in the courts, you find them in a drug and alcohol program, you find them in accidents, you find them everywhere where if you look for it, you'll find them. So let me, this is the last slide just before we go.
Okay.
Let me see if I can screen share. This is Dr. Russell Barkley's work. And he says, where are they lost? They're in the credit bureau, they're always going bankrupt. They're in medical therapy clinics, they're in jail and prisons, driving tickets, and then somatizing, having vague aches and pains, and this as far as medical, and the anxiety is a very, very big thing. Sleep, 50% of the ADHD kids don't sleep. And unfortunately, unhealthy behavior like low exercise. At the age of 11, they have very poor dental care and female obesity. So you can see a lot of these, and school dropouts, university failure. So if you have patients and family members and people that you know that are struggling with this, especially got in the same family, others are doing well. So why are they doing, what's happening? Unemployed, inconsistently employed, and underachieving. So Hannibal always, he calls it chronic, unexplained underachievement. Chronic is lifelong, unexplained means you do things, you don't just sleep all day, but you're not doing as well as you could or you should. And that is where the adults and gamblers and teenage pregnancy and all these things. So this is part of the thing. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jeeva. Thank you, Anita and Dave. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting to us. Thank you, Samaya, for your wisdom. Thank you for everybody for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on the 2nd Wednesday of next month, 7 to 8 p.m. And we will be talking on ADHD, continuing with relationships, and RSD. Yes, have a good night, everybody, and remember to contribute, don't contaminate.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Jesse, you can stop recording.
Good idea.